Greetings and welcome to another River Radio Sports Central podcast alongside Matt Varney from 103.5 ESPN. I am Darren Kinnard, and it is Midwinter Tournament week. Of course, not all the Midwinter tournaments are playing this week, but the bulk of them are, and I went through and counted them up, all the tourneys with teams from our immediate region, and then when you expand it out a little bit, we're talking more than 20 tournaments, boys and girls. When I say that this state is tournament crazy, now you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's a lot to keep up with, without a doubt. Some of them you forget exist. Some of them you don't know exist. And then all of a sudden you go on River Radio Sports Central and you're like, oh, there's a tournament right there. And everybody's playing in one except for maybe like a handful of teams. Almost everybody's playing in one this week, though.
And there's a couple more next week.
Yeah.
A couple conference tournaments, the GEC tournament, and then outside the region, the Little Illini Conference tournament and also the National Trail Conference tournament. But again, I think to this point where we're at, and we've had some that have finished up already. We have some that will determine trophy games tonight. And, of course, with those, you have a bunch that have, that will do all of their trophy games tomorrow. I don't think anything has crazy happened to this point that would really make me go, wow, I did not see that coming.
Yeah, no, I don't think I've seen anything that's been out of this world crazy. The ones that you might call an upset, I feel like were kind of teams that were fairly well matched overall, and maybe just they didn't go the way that you might expect it to, but overall things have gone pretty in line, not crazy by any means.
Right. And so what we have finished, Vienna won the Lady Eagle Winter Classic last night as we record on Friday morning here. They won the championship last night, beating Harrisburg 63-56. Now, both teams were out key contributors. Hannah Rohrer was in a walking boot for Harrisburg, and so that's a big loss for them. And for Vienna, Jenna Waters was out with the stomach flu, and she's just a quiet but a huge part of their offense and defense. And then to add on to that, Ava Rush, who ended up getting the MVP honors, she only had 9.
Yeah.
And yet Vienna still found a way to win, and that tells me a lot about this club.
Absolutely.
That it's not just Rush and Summer Daubert. This is a deeper club. Last night, Iris Mount gets the start. She ends up with 21.
Yeah.
And that's enormous for them, I think, moving forward.
Yeah, in terms of looking at further down the line with postseason coming up, teams like that are going to go far. You need a team that can say, Star's not feeling it tonight or Star is out, and someone else can step up. And the fact that it's someone that wasn't originally in the starting lineup to be able to be the one that rises up, that says a lot about Vienna. And so good on Iris Mount to step up when they need it or two. She will be asked in the future to do something similar, maybe not in a starting capacity, but they know now that they can turn to her.
And again, where Waters' presence was missed was the fact that she, when she's in the game, a lot of times she'll run point, and then that way Daubert and Rush can kind of, work off of that. And last night, Rush had to handle more of the point guard duties, and so that maybe took away a little bit of her scoring. But here's a situation where Vienna was great early in the third quarter, extended the lead to 20. Harrisburg gets it down in the fourth quarter, down in the final 3 minutes, gets it down to 5 or 6 points. But Rush was the one that made the key plays, a couple of driving layups. Even though she only had 9, she had big buckets in the fourth quarter, and then just kind of that steadying presence that you expect a senior leader to have.
Yeah, without a doubt. Rush does everything that you expect that senior leader role to do. She says, "What do you need from me, Coach?" Basically. Right. I remember they won Team of the Week a few weeks ago, and they had a morning practice. I talked with Coach Metcalf a little bit beforehand. We were waiting for all the girls to come in. She was the last one in, but it was because she was feeling a little bit sick. But she still showed up. She didn't have to show up when she's feeling sick. Now, of course, Coach Metcalf probably says, yes, she does. But when you get down to, a lot of coaches will say, you know what, You're not feeling well. Go ahead and take the day off. We'll continue preparing without you. But that just goes to show, also, just in that instance, also told me what kind of a player Rush is also in that moment of, I'm feeling sick, but I'm going to be there for my team. I'm going to prepare for the upcoming games, just like I was still healthy and everything. And so that then goes and plays a role into something like last night's game where, you weren't feeling well, but you still showed up for practice, and so you didn't miss that step. Yes, this is weeks ago. They were preparing for totally different teams at that time, but it still makes sure that you aren't a day behind when you could have taken that day off.
And the other champion crown last night was at West Frankfort. Sessler-Waltonville holds off Fairfield in the title game, 48-42. And again, this is on the girls' side. Actually, both sides. It's 4 teams, and so it's a round robin. So that Sessler and Fairfield game turned out to be the de facto championship game. The Red Devils took care of their business, and they won it. And they're a club that they can throw size at teams that you're not used to seeing. Zevin Zimbro was named tourney MVP, and she's 6'1" maybe, and they've got a couple other tall girls, and you don't see a ton of size, and so that is going to be to their advantage potentially here as they go down the line in the postseason.
Yeah, you talked about earlier about upsets and whatnot. I wouldn't call it an upset by any means, but I think maybe that was the one result people didn't maybe see coming in the West Frankfort Midwinter. If you've been paying attention to the girls' teams a little bit, obviously Sesser's been good this year, Fairfield's been good this year, but I don't think a lot of people saw them coming away with the trophy. I still think when you look at it, okay, Heron, even though they've been a little down this year, I think a lot of people would have expected maybe them to be the ones coming away with it, just because they're a bigger school, and so they even though they've been down, they had opportunities, but when you come away with it, the two better teams kind of ended up last night playing for the championship, and good for Sesser to get that win.
Well, when you see round robin scheduling, that last game is the one that going into the tournament they think's probably going to be the championship.
You hope
game
to be,
because it's not the bracket, and it could have just been, hey, we're West Frankfort and we're hosting the tournament. We're going to play the final game here. But I'm sure they thought that that was going to be the title game with them and with them and Heron and both being river to river schools. But then you have two Black Diamond teams come in and go, not so fast here.
Yeah, and like I said, they've both been pretty good, but they've been ones that if you haven't been digging deep into the girls' basketball, which I know some people in the area, they take that on the surface area. They'd say, okay, these are the maybe top 5 or so. When you dig a little bit deeper, though, you do find Fairfield and Sesser have been pretty darn good this year, and so they were deserving to be in that spot.
Speaking of pretty darn good, the Nashville Hornets.
Oh, my gosh.
And last night in the semifinals up at Highland, they absolutely trucked Breeze Mater Dei 60-35 to earn a spot opposite O'Fallon, who's a 4A school in the championship game. That'll be tomorrow in Highland. And Nashville's a team that has just continued to just churn out victories, and doing so a lot of times in dominant fashion. I know when you looked at those pairings, you thought, maybe a Bree Central Nashville final, which could be a sectional final preview. Central got beat in the semis by O'Fallon. Again, no shame there. That's a 4A school that's won state titles in the last few years. So, to see those 2A teams speaks to that level of difficulty that we talked about in the last couple weeks about the seeding and the subsectional of death, so to speak. Yeah. But Nashville gets another chance, or a chance for another notch, on their resume as they face an O'Fallon team. Again, this is a 4A quality team, and Nashville's going to get a chance to play for the title.
Yeah, without a doubt. This is going to be – I mean, they've been playing tough opponents all season long. Whenever they're not playing in conference, basically, they're scheduling the toughest people that they can, the toughest tournaments that they can find in their area. And so to be in this position, the Nashville girls should be feeling like they're on top of the world right now. They're playing with house money, playing against a team like O'Fallon in the championship game over at Highland. And so if you get the win, I think a lot of people are going to start looking around and saying, how far can they take this thing? If you don't get the win, I still think people are asking that. But if they get a win over a powerhouse like O'Fallon in 4A, I think everyone's going to start looking around being like, we might need to start booking hotel rooms.
And O'Fallon's not as strong as they have been, but again,
Sure.
they're still 4A. Alton appears to be the big school over there that's the dominant force. But I think there's the expectation from Nashville is that we're going to go win this title.
Yeah, I think so.
And, and again, that's you would hope that would be the case, but they're so confident, and rightly so, because they had all the success last year as freshmen and sophomores, and again, so when you look at this club, you don't want to say that anything that happens here is gravy because you got next year, because you never know what's going to what can transpire, but this is not unexpected, and it's not a stretch to go, this is a team that's going to be really dang good next year, too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and some programs just have all the luck in that, but again, I think that not that they shouldn't be feeling the way. I mean, they're so good that they have the right to feel like,
absolutely.
Yeah, it doesn't matter that they're a 4A club that's usually pretty good. Maybe they're a little down this year, like you said, but they have the right to be walking in and say, yeah, we expect to win this one. But I do think you win this one. I do think a lot of people in Nashville are going to say, all right, let's just start booking hotel rooms in Bloomington Normal right now.
Well, and I think that, again, for the casual observer, when you see somebody truck Mater Dei by 25.
Yes, exactly.
And again, Mater Dei maybe isn't quite at that same level as they have been in the past, but still, that's an attention getter.
Yeah, without a doubt. And like you said, maybe just exactly like you said, but also, it is also the middle of January when this is the time when we see a lot of teams dealing with sickness. We were talking about that, about a couple other teams before turning the mics on here, but that might have played a role as well. I wasn't there, so I can't say for sure, but, you get to this point of the season, everybody's tired, which means it's not an excuse, but everybody's tired. And, then you get hit, one player gets hit with sickness. We just talked about it with Vienna, and that can change the whole outlook of the team. Vienna, it didn't matter, and I'm just speaking off of a potential here. I don't know if this happened,
sure.
but if that happened, yeah, you could see your team all of a sudden that might have been expecting to be back and forth till the last second with the team. All of a sudden, you might take a 20-point loss.
But this is truly the dog days of the season.
It is,
and we've seen teams that whether it's at a tournament or we've seen them go in one of these Saturday shootouts and just lay an egg.
Oh yeah,
but yet. It's almost like then they're able to, get out the Etch-a-Sketch and clear the screen. And because once we get here a couple weeks deep in February, the records go 0-0, and that changes the mindset for everything.
Yeah, well, then you either shake the Etch-a-Sketch clean and you draw a beautiful painting, or it ends up being worse generally. It's one or the other. I've seen it go both ways.
There's very little middle ground.
Yeah, I can reference last season for Murfreesboro. They went to the Rich Herron shootout at Benton at the start of February. Saw Vienna then, and Vienna was fantastic last season. But it was the first time that Murfreesboro had ever played with a shot clock, because that was the first time they'd ever seen it. Yeah. Didn't have a great game the night before. I think they played Herron, and it just didn't go their way. I think people were feeling sick as well, as I keep mentioning. And it was the first game of the day. And then you look at the other side, Vienna got to rest their starters the night before as well. And just it all went about how you would expect it to go for Murfreesboro. Just was not their day by any means. And then after that, they just couldn't seem to grab the magic the rest of the season.
So looking at some of the tournaments have their final set. We mentioned Nashville and O'Fallon and the girls. Mount Vernon and Marion will be playing in Carbondale. Yeah. That is a juicy South 7 matchup. Congratulations to Lady Rams head coach Jeff Lonnon, who won his 400th game last night. And so that's going to be a juicy championship. When you look at the boys, the Midland Trail final is set, and that is at Weber. It's going to be the top seed Waltonville, the number 2 seed Weber. Those two were supposed to play during the ice storm.
That's right.
That got postponed to next week, so they haven't played yet. They didn't cross paths at Christopher, and so now this first matchup is going to be for the conference tournament title.
And that intrigues me a lot because obviously Waltonville is undefeated. They've been fantastic all season long. They got a great group of kids over there. But then Weber has the Marlowe kid, who is just any night could score 50 on a team.
Right.
So,
and that's not an exaggeration.
It's not. We've seen it multiple times where it's been somewhere between 40 and 55 points for this kid several times this season. And so that right there is a juicy matchup as well, because every time out now, Waltonville, that every time they win, that target gets a little bit bigger. And, it'd be great to see them also go undefeated all the way to the state title, potentially. You don't see a lot of those happen. But they also know that that's a tall task, and every time out, you could just have an off day, and then someone gets to put that one in the loss column on you. And Weber feels like in such a big game, they're going to be at home, as you mentioned, and they've got a kid that just can put up as many points as he wants to every single night. Feels like a game that might be going down to the wire.
They, Mr. Marlowe, as we shall call him, is up for the primetime performer this week, because last week he had 46 at Johnston City, then he had 34 in a win over Sandoval, and then he threw in 37 in a win over Red Hill on Saturday. And so the difference, though, is that Waltonville's going to make his life tough.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be and I'm not comparing him to Michael Jordan, but, the going joke was you held Michael to 23.
Right.
He only had 17 in last night's semifinal win over Woodlawn. So what I see is that the supporting cast around him is getting better. I saw them early at Christopher. I also saw them at the Wayne City tournament. He was having to do a lot of the heavy lifting, and so now the other guys fill in some roles that they hadn't because of graduation and stuff. And so now they start to come. They're 17-2.
Yeah,
and
they're
so,
good.
Now they have not played the schedule that Waltonville has, so that makes a big difference. And so, again, this is another opportunity for Waltonville. It's a game that they would certainly be favored, even though it's at Weber.
Right.
But when you look at Waltonville's schedule, you've got this game. You're going to play them again here soon, but coming up, you've got the weekend where they're going to go to Marion.
That's right.
And then they're going to turn around and play Centralia in the Pinckneyville Shootout.
Yep.
I think that's next week.
That is.
So this is a period of time where, yes, they're unbeaten. A loss is not going to be the end of the world, but this is a time in the schedule where they're going to be able to ramp up but at the same point, if it is truly the dog days for them, they're going to have to fight through some things to keep this going.
And, they're going to have some of the best tests that they could ask for in terms of a 1A club playing against two South 7 teams 2 days in a row.
Yeah.
That's fantastic right there, competition. And, if they can find a way, and this is no knock on Marion or Centralia, but if Waltonville can find a way to win in those two, well, first of all, coaches always talk about, obviously – learning lessons and losses, but they're always trying to find ways to learn while winning.
Right.
I have a feeling there'll be some lessons learned in those games against Marion and Centralia if they can pick up those wins. Right. At that point, I think everyone's going to be looking around and saying, again, who stops them? There's some big games coming up for smaller schools on both sides that I think everyone's going to be sitting here and saying, okay, if you get a win over this team, we're going to be all but anointing you, basically.
Yeah, and again, we talked about it last week about these tournament games being important for the seeding process coming up. Last night, that back to the Vienna-Harrisburg game, those are going to be the top two seeds in the subsection on that side. I don't see any way around it, and nothing that I saw last night changed that perspective. Again, what Waltonville does over the next week or so. I don't think that there's anything that's going to chase them off the number one line.
I can't see what would.
But at the same point, if you, like you said, you go in there and you handle your business and you talk about solidifying.
Yeah.
That's definitely the case.
These are big ifs, but they're possibilities here.
Right.
That's how good Waltonville is. They've gotten us talking about them going on the road and winning at potentially Marion, going to a neutral site, Pinckneyville, which is a tough place to play, even as a neutral site, and potentially beating Centralia, who a lot of people would say is the top team in the area.
Right, and that's no question there. So tonight is in the round robin or the pool play ones. tonight's the de facto semifinal night at a lot of places. We have some bracketed tournaments where it's semifinal night, such as Salem. And you mentioned Centralia.
Yeah.
Nesto put out a tweet last night that Centralia is 2 wins away from 2,400. So if they win in the semifinals tonight, not only would they be playing for the championship tomorrow night, but it'd be for number 2,400. And, oh, by the way, it could be Mount Vernon that they are playing for said, said cherries on top. And good grief. You talk about appointment television.
There needs to be a documentary crew there tomorrow night if that's the case, for all of the reasons, every reason you can come up with, from both sides. Look, we need television stations there from all over the country, not just the state, the country, because that is already such a huge rivalry game. And then Centralia, of course, would be going for the title for the 2,400. But then from the Rams side, you're not getting that on us, and we want the title as well. There'd be so many characters. Man, that's a must-see game, and a lot of people are going to be scattered through the area, not able to see the game. Right,
because there are so many tournaments and so many teams will be playing on Saturday night. And the merciful thing is looking at some of the schedules is at least the start times are staggered.
Yes.
And I know a lot of that has got to do with officials.
Yeah.
When you think about 20-plus tournaments, you got to have the guys and gals in stripes to call the games, and so they're staggered a bit, and then that Salem final is always one of the later ones. So so that, again, has potential drama. And there was a comment there, and I haven't confirmed it, but I believe it's correct, is that Centralia had beaten Mount Vernon for number 2,000. And again, when you play each other as much as they do, that's not incredibly surprising.
And they play each other unintentionally so much because, again, we're talking about them potentially seeing each other in a tournament final that, I mean, they know they're in the same tournament, but they don't know that's going to happen or not, and they just play each other so much.
Back in the day when Kent Williams was at Mount Vernon, they would play 5 times.
That's right.
2 in the regular season. They would meet in the holiday tournament final, and they would meet in the Salem tournament final, and then they met in the sectional final. And so it was, and you talk about a heated rivalry, and there is no level. It got to the point where they're like, hey, we probably ought to back off a little bit. And Mount Vernon ended up heading to Carbondale for a few years for the holiday tournament. But anyway, that's just adding a little more juice to an already juicy matchup. Over at Sparta, Murfreesboro gets Sparta tonight.
Yes.
And then the other de facto semi, it's Pinckneyville, with an opportunity to get to the title game, which it feels,
I'm almost sure that they
are they already there?
I think they're already there.
Well, you're right, because Steelville, was Steelville losing last night, although Steelville, I don't know how. Again, we get to the point with the brackets. We talked about this before we came on. Pool play, and if you end up in a 3-way tie, and who goes, and it's dependent on free throw. I'm sorry, I can't stand that. It's not that I have a problem with free throw shooting because it's obviously very important.
Yes.
But in a bracket, there's no doubt who's going to go to the championship game. And, you were talking about, a couple years ago, Murfreesboro ended up in a 3-way tie or a 4-way, whatever it ended up.
It was something like that,
and they ended up playing in the 7th place game.
Yep.
And it's just
They walked into Friday night saying, if we beat Sparta, and at the time they had a reason because Sparta had been down for several years, they had a reason to sit there and say, we think we'll win, and as long as we win, we'll be in the championship game. If we lose, we're going to the 7th place game. And they went to the 7th place game.
That's crazy. But anyway, so potentially if Murfreesboro can take care of business, potential Pinckneyville-Murfreesboro matchup in the championship game, which would be quite tasty.
Yeah.
But this is a dangerous game for Murfreesboro because, as you mentioned, they're dealing with not only some sickness, but they're playing a team that they just absolutely whacked at DuQuoin. And when I say whacked, it was a 57-point game. So will your kids be locked in?
Right, exactly. Well, and when that game was going on, it felt like the Simpsons meme of stop, he's already dead. Because, Sparta just came out and they just couldn't hit anything for the longest time. I want to say at the end of the first, it was something like 21-2 or something crazy like that. And the 2 came at the free throw line, by the way. So they just got out to an ice-cold start. And Murfreesboro took complete advantage of that to go to win the DuQuoin title at the start of the season. Now, Saturday, if you get to Pinckneyville, that's going to be a whole other beast entirely. So, yeah, you can't, if you're Murfreesboro, sit there and say, oh, boy, we got to choose, because Sparta is looking at you and saying, we want all the smoke right now.
You're on our home floor.
You're on our home floor. You beat us by so much. We want revenge. Right. And those are good athletes out there. I mean, Sparta's a 13-win team right now. It's not like they're not any good. They're a very good team. Everyone that kind of knew about them the past couple of years was saying headed into the season that they should be pretty darn good, and they're 13-5 right now. That's very respectable. That's a sign of that's an above-average team right there, without a doubt. So, yeah, if Murfreesboro wants to play Pinckneyville and reward everybody with a top 15 matchup in 2A, they're going to have to lock down the hatches tonight and make sure that they don't overlook Sparta. Yes, you can beat them by 57, and even if you give them, all their shots that they should have made at DuQuoin back, you look and say that's probably still a 15, 20-point win. Right. But again, if you don't lock down, you're going to take a loss.
It's the ultimate trap game.
It is.
Gosh, we get to play Pinckneyville on Saturday. Hey, you better take care of some business.
Exactly. I already know what my first question is to Daryl Murphy for our pregame interview. It's literally trap game, coach, huh? Right. And that's all, and he'll go with it.
Right. Yeah, because he knows. Looking at some of the other potential, actually they are semifinal because they're bracketed.
Right.
Marion and Bree Central is really attractive.
Yeah.
And then Waterloo, Nashville, and the other semifinal at Nashville is also really good.
Yes, it is. And I was talking with Gavin Murphy, who does play-by-play for us for Marion this morning, and he was saying, he reminded me, I didn't realize this, but he said the kids for Marion haven't won, the seniors specifically, have not won a tournament in their time at Marion. So they're feeling kind of saucy about this and like, we don't care it's Bree Central. First of all, they feel like they should be better than Bree Central to begin with. But second of all, they're like, we don't care who it is. Gosh darn it, we're going to win a tournament before we graduate.
And, and again, that other semifinal, Waterloo and Nashville.
Yeah.
Again, Nashville, a big win, I think, for seeding purposes with Mater Dei to even get to the semis. But, Waterloo, another 3A school. And again, I don't care how you slice it. Those championship and third-place games are going to be super important.
They are.
When you look down the road.
Oh, without a doubt. They will definitely mean something, because if you're in the championship game, okay, that means that you probably went 2-0, 3-0, however the bracket is set up. And so if you take second place, then you took a loss right there. And you might be playing against somebody that is also in your class, and so that will probably have them seated above you at this point. If you're in the third place game and you don't win your third place game, that means you went 2-2 probably. And that's tough in a week where you get 3 or 4 games. If you take 2 losses, that's tough to swallow right there.
Well, in a bracket, you go 1-2.
Right, exactly.
When you're at a setup like Sparta, you're right. It's 2-2. Oakville, you've got Columbia and Carlisle. Again, another seeding game.
Great matchup.
That's one of the semis. At West Frankfort, it's championship game tonight. Crab Orchard in West Frankfort. For the title, it's Thompsonville and Caro in the opener. And this is an opportunity for Crab Orchard to.
Yes.
You've had a pretty good season so far, and now you got a chance to play a river school, which doesn't come around very often, especially for a GEC school. So now you have a chance, and it's going to be a tough task on their home floor.
Yeah, without a doubt. But they've as you mentioned, they've been having a good season, but very under the radar. This could be one of those ones that it's time to sound the alarm. Crab Orchard is on the way, folks, and so. They have a chance to really impress a lot of people here tonight. John Brown always has his kids prepared. Every once in a while, they'll have a little bit of a dip of a season. This year, it's not been a dip, though, but not enough people are talking about Crab Orchard. They've had a very quiet season, but a very good season.
And just to the north, semifinals at the BIT, you got the host Rangers, who suffered their first loss last week to Pinckneyville. They get Carterville in the semis. The second semi, I think, is one of the best matchups of the night. Meridian and Herring. Yeah,
that one is one that I think everybody's got circled on their little whatever we're using these days to mark down all the matchups and whatnot on their brackets, I guess. because that just looks so good. It'll be a good challenge for Heron, and Meridian, I think, is just trying to recapture that magic that they had at the end of last year. They've not had as good of a season as they did last year, but they've still had a really good season. I think if they got a win over Heron, that'd be a nice feather in their cap, without a doubt, and then they'd be going to the BIT finals, of course. But on the other side, Heron knows. They saw each other in the third-place game last year at the BIT, and so they know what to expect from this team, and they know that if they try to overlook them, that they're going to get beat by Meridian. And so this is one that it's a toss-up type of game, even though you're, talking about 1A versus 3A. We're talking about that for next week for Waltonville and their matchups. But this is one where it's like, man, this is such a good 1A team. Doesn't matter. You can throw out the classes because this is just that good of a matchup right here. And then for Carterville and Benton, Carterville is going to definitely give their best, but Benton is just, after that loss, they're now very angry, clearly, and running through everybody. They gave no mercy to Roosevelt in the first round, and I have a feeling that they're going to be trying to continue to run through people.
Well, I don't think that as good as Dr. Tedeschi is, I don't think he's going to get the same type of looks against the Lions. But what a game. He set BIT records.
School record.
The school record, 50 points in the game, and he did it on 26 shots, Matty. Yeah. 21 of 26 from the field. The 21 field goal is also a tournament record. And look, and I know there were some people that are like, well, why was he even in the game in the third quarter, whatever. He started a lot of times, when a game's a blowout, the starters will start the third quarter. Right. And he hit like 4 buckets in a row. Yeah. And now you're within sniffing distance of a record. Look, so be it.
You can't
play the game.
I mean, not every record's going to come in a tightly contested game is the thing. And, I hear what those folks are saying, but at the same time, if anyone's earned something like that, it's Dr. Tedeschi. He's the nicest kid you're going to meet. Right. He's as humble as they come. He knows that he's good, but he also doesn't let it get to his head. And if his coach, Ron Weinmiller, says, you know what, I'm going to let you go for it, yeah, he deserves that.
Well, and it would happen, I think, in the first half of the third quarter. Yeah. And again, it's not like he had 40 shots to do it, right, or 50 shots to do it. He did it on 26 shots.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And, I mean, that just is, Benton going up and down the floor, basically, with Roosevelt. And, I mean, I don't know what...
That's not a good team. They struggle. They're basically a placeholder in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, respect to the team, but they really don't have business being in the tournament. And Benton gave themselves that when they're setting up the bracket. That's their right as the host team, without a doubt.
We've talked about that.
We have several times. But when they scheduled Roosevelt, they didn't think, Docker's going to get all these records by any means. No, they just gave themselves Roosevelt when they set up the bracket, and they said, we'll see what happens, and that's what happened. And there's nothing wrong with Docker getting those. Here's the thing. I haven't talked to JoJo Johnson, but I bet you JoJo Johnson is real happy for Docker.
Well, they I don't know that you could go into practice and hit 21 of 26.
I don't know, man.
And feel like you had confidence in doing so.
Yeah, I mean, missing that's a quarterback stat right there. Really, when I looked at,
and you have a great game.
Exactly. But it's much more achievable as a quarterback than it is as a basketball player. And I think I've just been all week thinking about it as almost a quarterback stat because I see that so many times at this point in the year, and more that people have talked to me about it, the more I've been like, yeah, that was pretty amazing, wasn't it?
If he goes 16 for 26, you think he had a great night.
Yeah, that's right.
He had 21. Anyway, one other tournament we talk about, the Superman Classic semifinals tonight. St. Mary out of Kentucky versus Vienna in the first one. Goreville and Massac County in the second one. We've talked about the Patriots being a struggle, but they're a team that's lurking in the postseason. They beat Charleston, Missouri, who's down a little bit, but always a quality team that comes to the tournament. They beat them in the first round. So it's Goreville and Massac in the semis with Vienna and St. Mary in the other. A lot of people, in that Goreville, Vienna going, hey, we could be playing for a title. And that would be juicy. But then Massac, is sitting there going, hey, this is our tournament, by the way. Yeah. And then the team that nobody's kind of thinking about is St. Mary, who I know nothing about.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't either.
But they play in Kentucky, and they've traditionally been a strong team and brought good teams to the Superman. So again, another interesting semifinal night in the area.
Well, and Massac County, I think, has been biding their time. They started out pretty rough. I think that's fair to say for Massac County standards. I think they started out 2-5 at one point, but they've been biding their time. Maybe they haven't been playing the upper echelon competition, but they've been getting better every little bit, a bit each week. And, they were competing with Harrisburg at the El Dorado tournament. They didn't get to where they expect to get to, but they're kind of a young team. And so they've been biding their time this January, and they've been trying to get better, just pick up wins, pick up some momentum, get some confidence in the young guys. And at this point in the season, don't be surprised if they all of a sudden pop a couple guys here that you don't expect them to, and then they all of a sudden might be sitting at, a 6 or 5 seed in the tournament, or rather the state tournament, because they picked up wins that people weren't expecting them to.
And the way that subsectional lays out, they're probably going to be a 6.
Probably.
And again, and that means that, the regional semifinal game is going to be difficult for the 3 seed.
Yep.
So again, that's assuming the seeding goes.
And just the way Joe Hossman coaches and develops his guys, he sits there and says, I don't care that I have all these young guys. They're going to learn by the end of the season how to play Massac County basketball. And we could be sitting there at 0-28 or whatever it is when the regionals start. But
still wouldn't want to play them.
Right, I still wouldn't want to play him because it's a Joe Hossman coach team, and Joe Hossman is scary by himself. You watch him go out there and coach, and he's one of the top 5 scariest coaches out there, and I'm sitting there on the sideline calling the game. I wouldn't want to be a player on the opposing side.
And then I lied. We have one more tournament to talk about, the Carmi-White County Invitational. You mentioned Harrisburg.
Yeah, they've been so good.
Bulldogs have been 3-0. They don't play tonight.
Yeah.
They play tomorrow with an opportunity to go unbeaten and take the championship. They play Fairfield tomorrow. Tonight, the big game. You got a couple Indiana schools in the first one, and then the rivalry matchup, Carmi and Fairfield. And again, you talk about it's not quite Mount Vernon Centralia, but this is a rivalry that dates back to the North Egypt Conference days, and it's carried over to the Diamond, and it doesn't matter what sport either.
Yeah, and those are, again, 2 teams that have kind of been lurking in the background a little bit all season. They've been doing all right. Maybe not the seasons they expected, but they've still been doing pretty good. And, Mitchell Edwards is so good for Carmi-White County that I wouldn't be surprised if he goes off tonight in this big rivalry game just to try to will the Bulldogs to the championship game.
Again, another guy that's a 30-piece weight.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So. Well, that's going to do it for us here on the River Radio Sports Central podcast, powered by our friends at NovaCare Rehabilitation. Going to be a very interesting weekend, and we'll have plenty to talk about next week as well. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.